Look at me. I'm doing my job.
I got a trophy.
I got a trophy.
But I'm 1,000% with you, man. I mean,
Yeah.
the LinkedIn thing is, it all comes back to trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we trust? It's like, it's an easy way. What's the first thing you do when you meet people?
Yeah, you Google them.
You Google, look them up, validate them.
Right.
And
if you like, how do you Google an employee that's just part of the cog in the wheel, right? Or in the machine. So they have to kind of, if you want to get promoted or whatever and get noticed, you start advertising that you have all these certifications and whatnot.
Yeah. The employees that want to break away definitely have to show their expertise,
do that.
but also showcases the interest that individual has in that particular space, which in itself is, I think we all admire folks that.
Right. And if you're looking for like a sales guy for your company, you probably want to find a guy that's out there doing things.
That's first thing you do when you see in a resume, you typing them up, and then you look at their social media and their Facebook, and you're like, that would have been a mistake. That's the worst. I've had a handful of those where I thought, oh, this looks really good on paper. And then you type in the name and fold back a few things, drop off the last part of their name, and then you get their their party name. And you're like, oh, man, this would have been catastrophic.
Right.
So,
well, Ricky, thanks for coming on the show. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me, brother.
For more than a few years, and tell everyone your story, your journey, because I find it fascinating, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is kind of a fun and exciting journey. When I look back at it, I couldn't be, in hindsight, as a parent now, I look back and I'm like, man, I have had an amazing journey, and so I grew up in the Seattle area. Both my parents were from very humble beginnings. Neither of my parents actually graduated high school.
Wow.
So growing up, we didn't have very much money. We didn't have zero money, but we didn't have very much money. Education was kind of in the background. My dad used to be like, the rich kids get to go to college and so forth. That's not going to be for you. Mm-hmm. And so education was kind of set to the side. And so growing up, that was always a big piece. And then around, I don't know, 7th grade, my parents had divorced, and then my life just completely changed. I had two parents that basically left to do their own things and ended up with a home to myself.
So in 7th grade, you were living by yourself.
Totally. I can imagine having a home to yourself in 7th grade. And this was in the 80s, so they were trying to sell the house for the divorce. Well,
high interest rates.
That's right.
High inflation.
3 years it took them to sell this house. So for almost a period of 3 years, I basically, and I was the worst nightmare for a real estate agent, because imagine you're trying to sell somebody's home and the parents are gone for weeks. I mean, my mom had moved out, started her own life.
Talking, right?
We didn't have cell phones back then. There was no communication. And so I was actually laughing because yesterday I was driving up the old hill where I grew up, and I saw a kid with grocery bags in his hands. And I thought to myself, that was me, 30 years ago, rolling up the hill with groceries. We used to actually paint curb addresses to make money, which was actually a really slick idea. So imagine you paint a curb address and you get $5 per house, and you get a whole neighborhood to do that. So I would go and buy groceries with that and come up the hill. And parents every once in a while would see me trucking up the hill and pull over and pick up. And so got to grow up and become independent very, very quickly, which was just actually, in hindsight, an amazing blessing. Mm-hmm. I had an ecosystem of friends that had parents that were really successful, that very quickly as parents, you start to realize, this kid's got a lot more freedom. And then they start peeling back the onion. And I tell you, I can think now of these little things that were given to me that I didn't realize at the time. So there was this.
They're like gifts.
They were gifts because one of the moms, they had a mom, my friend Amy, her mom was aware of this. They had, acre in the crossings plus very nice yard. And randomly she's like, hey, we'd like to start paying you to do our our yard weekly. And at the time, it was $50 a week that they were giving me. This was an exorbitant amount at the time, right?
Okay.
But
how much groceries could you buy back then with $50?
Taco time was around. That was my primary thing. But for $50, you could get, I don't know. I always judged it off boxes of cereal, and then Topperama, and I don't even know how I survived on the food I ate. But
30 years later, the research is coming out.
It's amazing what you can live on very, very, very little. My dad would come by once every couple of weeks and drop by some cash. I wasn't completely without money, but you run out of food and you're like, crap, I got to go walk or take the bus a few miles away to get food. And then you're just like, just.
How did you stay disciplined in school?
I didn't. I was terrible in school, man, to be honest with you. Growing up with folks that just didn't have a primary interest in school, I just didn't have much interest in it. And I was the kid that they would pull out in first grade and second grade that had the reading problems, and you'd have to do this. And in hindsight, it was a blessing in disguise. I love reading and learning today, but I think and I always tell my wife this, it's my belief that the greatest gift I had growing up was the lack of knowledge, because I was never threatening. It was easy for me to make friends because I never had like this attitude that I know more than you. Right? I was always like, sounds like a great idea.
You weren't elitist or...
No, there was nothing that I really brought to the table. I was never threatening to those that were really smart. So it was easy for me to connect to folks in a different way socially and so forth. So education was very much lacking. I was on my own at 17. I moved out, and I had a job. I was doing timeshare sales, which
which company?
Pacific Monarch Resorts.
Okay.
Out of San Mateo. So I was the guy or the kid that would call you up at 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night and would try to talk you into going to a timeshare presentation in exchange for something, which was the greatest job ever in hindsight, because you're literally getting beaten up every single day.
People are on vacation. They don't really want to be pitched.
This isn't even on vacation. I'm at home picking up a phone. This was back before mobile phones. So we were calling people at home. A lot of times dinner time or whatever. Hey, this is Rick, Pacific Monarch Resorts, calling about this application you filled out. And it was all mumbo jumbo stuff. And we've got this 3 nights, 2-day stay. If you go down to this timeshare presentation, you get this. And we had to convince them. And if we convinced them to go to this presentation, which was a few miles away from their place in San Mateo, they would they get an opportunity to buy, or they get a couple days overnight. I would get paid a commission on that. And it turned out I got kind of good at it.
Yeah.
So I was making, I don't know, 25. Yeah, there's some, they had all kinds of resorts. I was making like $25 an hour. And that age was incredible. So I had enough to actually move out.
Yeah.
And support myself. I'd work 3 to 4 hours a day after school.
High school.
Yeah. And so I made a little bit of a killing enough. Now, as you can imagine, I had a roommate in high school. And we both were pretty social, and we had our own place. This is not a good idea. But
recipe for a lot of fun.
We had way too many big parties. By the end of the summer, within 6 months, we were. I remember it was my senior year, and after you graduate high school, everybody getting prepared for college or leaving, and then there's those that hadn't done so well in school, myself included, that were going, what am I going to do? And then I just happened to get evicted from our apartment at the end of that summer. I had lost my job at Pacific Monarch Resorts. Oh, we were just, we were the social pledge house. One of our roommates who came just to live with us for the summer, our buddy Justin, he was a social pledge at Theta Chi's at Wazoo. So we became like a pledge fraternity house during the summer. I mean, the worst neighbors you could ever imagine. I can't even believe that. That we lasted as long as we did. So we get evicted, and yes, the life of a coug.
So how'd you get introduced to Wazoo?
Dude, Justin, really, the guy that, so my roommate at the time, his very, very good friend, and somebody I knew somewhat was Justin Andrews, who actually was in the Greek system. He came to live with us for the summer, and I just loved him. I loved all his friends that were coming over. I'm like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. I don't have the grades to get into a 4-year school at the time. Then I get evicted at the end of the summer, and I'm literally 2 days. My car is packed. I'm literally 2 days away from living in my car. Oh, man. Worst case scenario.
Right.
And my mom wouldn't take me to live with them. My dad lived out of state and was at the time, I think he was homeless, and so it's like, man, what am I going to do? And I get this call that my step grandparents were going to offer me a place to stay potentially up near where I was at. So I met with them, put my smiley face on that I would be a good kid and that I would pay them rent and so forth. And these two probably became the most influential people in my entire life. So retired lieutenant colonel, military background, my step grandfather, practically a father. Marilyn was my step grandmother. She was an English teacher, both very, very educated, very, very smart. They were empty nesters. They had a room downstairs, and they said, "Okay, you can come live with us if you go to college, and you're working or you're paying rent." And so that's what I did. I went and got a job. I ended up working at Starbucks. I went to Bellevue College, which is right up the road from here, Bellevue Community College at the time. And my goal was to get my grades up to a point where I could go to Wazoo. That was the purpose. And so,
did you just wake up one day and you're like, I gotta get my act together?
Yeah. A little bit chasing girls too, right? Because you realize there's no girls sticking around, and all the cute girls are going to college, and man, I better figure this out.
Right.
And that's a humbling experience too, when you have no choices. I always tell the kids, like, man, at least have the choice.
Right.
Even if you don't want to go to college, I didn't have the choice, and it sucked. And for me, I had wasted a lot of years of not learning. I mean, I didn't know how to learn. I mean, it wasn't. And so I enter into Bellevue Community College, and they have you take these little tests to place you. It was kind of embarrassing, but so I do the English and I do the math test, and 101 is where you should be. And my English was 066. So
what is that?
That means when you walk into your class, everybody in the room was a second language for them, and it was my first language. I walked into the English class, and I immediately walked up to the teacher or professor and said, "Hey, I think there's a mistake. I speak English."
I speak English.
And I remember what she said. She's like, "You speak it, but you don't know it." I'm like, oh man. Oh, okay. Well, and so
where do I sit?
Where do I sit? Yep. And so that and math was the same thing for me, Matt. It was like I was pretty far behind, and so I was lucky because I had the step grandparents that had an education background, and they had the time and they had the interest. They just loved it. So I became, I want to say a project, but a perfect timing scenario where I needed the right platform, resource, and love, and they had all of it to give.
Yeah.
So the timing was perfect. I was so fortunate. I would spend hours each week with my step grandmother, just literally like, what does this mean? Teaching. She just sat there and spent hours with me. Oh, you don't know that word? Let's look it up in the dictionary. Just teaching me how to find information. It's kind of embarrassing, but I literally just didn't even know how to track down how to get the information. And so within a year, I had enough credits to go to Washington State University. I was going to be a finance major, which meant that I would be taking, when you start at 066, and I think it was 079, which is a couple layers below in math. It meant that I would be taking English and math all my years of college, where most folks just did it the first semester.
First quarter,
So I found myself at Wazoo, which was an amazing experience, man.
Yeah.
So,
and you continue to do sales there, right?
Yeah, so at Wazoo, I went to Wazoo, and there wasn't, from the age of maybe 14, even through, there's been no gaps in my life of work. And I think at Wazoo, what I quickly learned was it's in Pullman. There's not a bunch of jobs floating around like the Seattle area. So you piece together multiple jobs. So I'd say on average, I had 4 different jobs at Pullman. 5-hour, 10-hour jobs here that would match up. So yeah, Pullman was a full-time job of some sort. I worked at the weight room there, which was a blast. I did the best college job I ever had was actually one of the coolest jobs I ever had was I did the college packages. So all the fraternities and sororities, they go to Mazatlan or Puerto Vallarta. They do
vacation.
They do the vacation thing during spring breaks, and then they did a Whistler trip, right? So there's 2 trips the colleges would all meet up to, and I was the guy on campus that sold the packages to all the fraternities and the sororities, which was the best way to meet everybody in the planet and connect.
Are you still connected to a lot of those people?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, the Greek system's kind of, they don't let folks run around from one fraternity to the next. Okay. It's just not
Were you part of the Greek system?
I was a social pledge at Theta Chi. So because of my friend Justin, I got to know everybody. In fact, I had all kinds of friends there. I was very close and tied to those guys. But I didn't want to live in the fraternity. Didn't want to live in the fraternity. I was going in there as a sophomore, so I was actually I would have been a year older than the other folks. So I paid fees to do all the social functions, but not go to chapter. It was the best of all worlds. So I get to enjoy the benefits of a fraternity without some of the behind the scenes things they have to do to initiate and create brotherhood.
Amazing.
I created brotherhood in my own way. Through partying.
So what was life like after Wazoo?
So after Wazoo, I got done, and my goal was to be a stockbroker. So here I went from zero education, absolutely none, to I just started learning how to educate myself a little bit. And then I get done with college, and by the time I ended college, I was starting to actually like learning. I was like, oh, this is very empowering to actually know some knowledge.
Gone on to grad school.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list, man. And I was the first person to graduate high school in my family. I was the first person to go to college in my family, which were big milestones and so forth. But I get done with Wazoo, and I went out to be a stockbroker. I actually got my Series 73 at the time, and I took a Munis bond. And then I was going to be doing my 7, and the market just crumbled.
It's like the movie Wolf of Wall Street.
Dude. I'm sitting there, Oldie Stockbrokers, it's in Bellevue, it's in downtown Bellevue. I'm working there, and I can remember huge dips in the market. We had a guy come in one day that had lost a lot of money and wanted to fight one of the brokers.
Wow.
And, it just became kind of clear, like, my face right out of college is not going to attract money. Everybody hates anything related to this internet.
Yeah.
So I took a job doing sales for Airborne Express, and they, folks didn't know this at the time. They're like an airline behind the scenes, meaning I could get discounts on airline tickets So 90% off airline tickets.
Wow.
So I'm a bachelor. I get 90% off airline tickets, and I'm working for this company out of Bothell at the time, and doing sales for them. And then I had heard of
selling logistics.
it was selling basically the small to medium businesses that would have, volume type shipping. You'd give them pricing incentives, and then you try to, oh, you're with UPS here, we'll give you an incentive to move to us, that type of stuff. And so we do the sales there, and I knew I had this 90% off, which was great. So I would take my weekends. I could go to Vegas for $25 to stand by. It was, wow, what's the chances? And I got this crazy idea that I wanted to travel Europe. Mm-hmm. And so I took a second job on the weekends working as a bartender at Bear Creek Country Club. Mm-hmm. So for about a year and a half, that's about a year and a half, I saved up.
Uh-huh. You learn any golf?
I'm terrible at golf, man. Oh, man. This guy, Danny, that was the pro there. I'm a lefty, and he tried teaching. He was a pro, and he was a lefty, and he gave me a set of clubs for, pennies on the dollar. Uh-huh. I was working 7 days a week. I had no time. I had no time to be golfing. And when I did golf, it was terrible, man. We had a couple of couple of folks wanted to hire me. Mm-hmm. So like, hey, Rick, come golfing with me.
Yeah.
And it was, I just remember thinking, there's no way they're going to want to hire somebody that golfs like this, right? Type of thing. So to answer your question, no, my golfing game is, even to this day, it's terrible. But I worked the 7 days a week, saved up, and went with a friend and backpacked Europe.
Mm-hmm. What was your first stop?
Munich.
Munich?
Yep.
Okay. Why Munich?
Because I was getting standby passes, which, by the way, when you do international travel, I know you've done a lot of international travel, cheap is not good.
Yeah.
It's just not. and we went cheap. We went to Munich. We got off, and remember, this is before like cell phones were around, mm-hmm. and we had no itinerary. I don't know why somebody didn't tell us you should call ahead and set up hostels and stuff like that.
Uh-huh. So big shout out and a huge thank you to Zekin for making this happen. They have an amazing platform. Check out their website, zeacon.com, zeacon.com. So,
dude,
so you're off the plane, you're walking in Munich, and you just walk into different hotels.
So we thought we would. Kind of start off and head up towards Amsterdam, mm-hmm. and then work our way down. So that's what we did, and it was an incredible adventure. It was pretty nuts, but there was at least a few cases. I can think of one night where we went into Switzerland and Interlaken. We pulled in to town. We figured we could just find a hostel there. They were all full. And they always reserve a couple for females, mm-hmm. right? Because us dudes, who cares if we have to sleep on
there's a sidewalk, go for it.
The train station, wherever it was, which we had a few of those as well. But somebody's like, hey, I got a buddy that works for a place. I think we can get you guys overnight. And we ended up, I think it was kind of cool. We ended up in a retirement hospice home. Mm-hmm. that had some extra beds because somebody had just passed away. Right. And this guy was backdooring us to make a few extra bucks. And so we had the little reclining beds going up and down the TV, and it was probably one of our best days. But Europe was an incredible adventure. I got jacked while I was there when I was sleeping. So all my stuff was stolen. Wow. And my grandparents I was telling you about, the ones that I'm very, very close to, they got a call from somebody saying, hey, saw some bags torn apart. It looked like somebody might have had some real problems. So for like maybe a month, I hadn't called them for like a month.
So they were worried.
They thought they're like,
thought you were dead in Europe.
What are you doing? Why didn't you give us a call? I'm like, I no idea. So Europe was great. Came back from Europe and was without a job, mm-hmm. had an apartment to pay for, and it was kind of a crazy thing because somebody said, hey, have you thought about getting a job in telecom? I can get you into this telecom space. Yeah. It's not sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Telecom.
Selling telephones.
Phone service.
Yeah.
What's? I mean, I want to be a stockbroker.
Yeah.
Phone service, like telephone lines, you know. And I think I remember the guy Dave that had said, "Yeah, I get you a job." Of course, he had a little finder's fee. I think I heard later, but $100 a phone line. Like they'll pay you $100 a phone line. Sign me up, you know.
Yeah.
And I get a job for a company called McLeod USA, and you got to keep in mind, I have all my life been kind of just a grinder, balls to the wall. I had a ton of inside sales experience by this time. I mean, I had at Airborne Express.
Super comfortable with the phone.
Absurdly comfortable. And that's the thing that most folks hate it. So I go into McLeod, zero experience. And before I even went to training, I had already was like hitting quota practically. And so I had a couple of big months, and this was in 2001. I had a couple of big months, and I think there was a month where I had a $10,000 check, and I immediately, and at the time we were a bunch of my buddies and I were living in Kirkland, roommates, and I immediately said, I won't get this type of check every month,
right?
But what a great time to go tell the banks that this is what I make.
Yeah. So,
and
back then it was what, stated income?
It was drug dealer. It was I called them the drug dealer loans, right? Yeah, this is what I make every month. This is the last paycheck stub I have, and that's essentially what I did. I went in. I've had actually one of my buddy Justin. He ended up doing a loan for me, and yeah, it was this high interest rate, like 9%, whatever. It was a crappy interest rate, but it allowed me to buy.
Which is what it is now, right?
Dude, I bought a house up in Finn Hill in Kirkland. My first home. It was $254,000, which, I mean, my budget was like $175, and this was way over it. And I would have been dead in the water if any one of my friends decided they didn't want to live with me, right? So I had all these stars on the line. We ended up making it work.
Yeah.
And I filled it up with all my buddies. We
Party House Part 4.
It became it's interesting because I was like in this new phase of my life. I'd just come back from Europe. I was like, man, I need to, you know, I want to drive for some business and make some money and settle down. And so right about that time I met my wife, which was not the perfect time. Like we both laughed. It was the furthest thing from anything I had planned at that time was to meet somebody that I'd be spending the rest of my life with. Right? It was like, my wife Tara, who I'm still married with, we're 20 years or so. I mean, I was at a bar is where I met her, and she had a boyfriend at the time, which was a bit of a challenge, a little speed bump. But I'm persistent. I understand the persistence is a big thing. So I heard she was looking for a job through the table that was at, and of course, I said I could find her one.
Sounds like how I met my wife.
Same idea?
Same idea.
It works. My manager, I remember my manager at the time, I called her up, Brandy, and I said, you got to do me the biggest favor. You got to have to interview this girl I gave the phone number to last night because I told her I could get her an interview and a job. So my wife, Tara, actually got a full-on interview and the whole bit. Not even hiring, just legitimately a favor for your top salesperson at the time. You're like, you got to do this for me. So yeah. So the where I was going with the Tara and I met right around that time, and basically my life started to just conform into simplicity. Yeah. And we did weekends doing popcorn stealing. Yeah. We started buying up real estate because Tara had a background in that space. So we started buying up homes, and our weekends were spent.
She was with First American.
First American Title, and then she was a mortgage broker at Home Street Bank before that. It was great because we literally would, we had some equity from the home that I'd purchased. And we were in a position to go out and buy a bunch of rentals. Our weekends were spent popcorn stealing, tearing down, hundreds, probably thousands of loads to the dump. I mean, we were boring, but persistent. So
it was a mom and pop shop that you guys running, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We were pretty boring too. Well, you knew me then. I mean, like the Crabbes were pretty well known for not going out.
Yeah.
9 o'clock.
Say, hey Ricky, you want to go here? You want to go here?
Not gonna sugarcoat it, brother. Probably not gonna make it. Yeah. So how did you meet your wife? I'm curious on that because I don't think I know that.
Yeah, I'll tell it on a different story.
Okay.
I'll tell it on your show. This is about you today.
Oh man.
But yeah, so how'd you get into? So how'd you parlay the telecom experience? And you were at Threshold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I decided to branch out on your own.
Exactly. Yeah, I ended up at McLeod. I had a lot of success, and then a manager of mine at the time had broken away to do his own thing. Got me to come over. I had a lot of success in the sell side.
Yeah.
Helped build up a company pretty successfully, and then about 2 years ago, parted ways and started my own thing, Portable Consultants.
And what do you guys do?
We simplify sourcing for data and voice services for enterprise business. And then we've got a platform that provides the ability to get a 360 view of all the stuff that goes on there. And, I think I said telecom in 2001 wasn't very sexy, but fast forward to 2023, it's super sexy because...
Why is that?
Name anything that we do on any daily basis that doesn't include the internet.
Right.
I mean, you could shut my power down at my house, but if you shut my internet down, my kids are screaming. Like, there's nothing we operate or do that doesn't have impacts as a result of the internet. So if you're an enterprise business, every enterprise business today has
internet.
They have internet.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they have 2 internet connections in business locations.
So just as a backstop.
Yeah, I mean, if you got an office of 1,500 people and internet goes down, what do people do?
Go home.
They go home. Better internet.
Right.
And that's the other thing. Better have really good internet and a better user experience at the office than you do at home, or people are going to be at home.
So are you sourcing from different providers?
Yeah. So, it's kind of interesting. There are 7,500 plus internet service providers in just the U.S. alone.
I thought it was just Comcast.
Yeah, I know everybody thinks that, man. It's so funny. And Comcast, Lumen, AT&T, but the reality is there are thousands of internet service providers, and the wire that goes into the buildings out there is owned by many, many different entities, PUDs. There are cities and counties that have said, we want better internet, and they bring it in. So, from our perspective, what we do is we go, hey, listen, we're a solutions-driven company. We want to simplify sourcing. So if you're an enterprise company, you've got 100 locations or 50 locations across the U.S. or even internationally, because we do a ton internationally, and you want to source A and B internet connections in each of your sites. Door number one is you could go out there and piece together all these different service providers, which is surprisingly more difficult than folks think, right? So when you go out on the enterprise side and you buy a circuit from AT&T or a Comcast, like you mentioned, the first thing you do is as a business is you got to onboard that carrier. Okay, that onboarding process for the enterprise space is not easy. It means here's a master service agreement. Let me get my legal to redline it. Oh, they hate everything about this. That can go back and forth for a few months.
Wow.
Right? You've got different products and different carriers. And then once you sign a contract in the enterprise space like that, you then have 4 to 6 months before the installation actually takes place. So it's not like when you order internet at home and the Comcast guy's out there a week later. Not the same.
Guy shows up between the hours of 10 a.m. and 7 p.m.
It's totally different.
He'll show up at that
Yeah,
One of those
exactly.
types.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not like that in the business space. And so you've got folks, you've got whole projects teams that have to manage and police this because you got to have access into buildings and property managers have to meet. There's a lot of coordinating that goes on. And then once the service is installed, it goes to billing, and then you got support. So what I just described to you is what each carrier has. And if you times that by 50, 100 different sites and the number of carriers that you have to manage, it's just not even possible, right? So
there's a lot of company resources that need to be used to even get to the point of finding a provider.
Yes. And what we found over the years, for many, many years, businesses would take a big trade-off to this. They would go to the AT&T or the Comcast. They'd say, just let me buy all these services from you. And those guys are like, we're not in the business of buying from our competitors, right? We're in the business of buying, like using our own stuff. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what, Mr. Customer, if you want to do that, we're going to jack up the prices and we're going to do it for convenience. Mm-hmm. So you have enterprise businesses out there that are just paying exorbitant amounts of money to big giant named carriers to sell them services outside of where they're really good at. Mm-hmm. Every carrier's got some things they do well and other things they don't do so well.
Investment world.
So yeah, exactly. And so for us at Portable Consultants, we're like, hey, there needs to be an easy button for the enterprise business, right? So imagine the ability to have a single master service agreement. Once that's in our environment, that gets you access to thousands of carrier networks around the world. So you've got new sites, great. What are the best options? And these are not only wired options, but 2023, you've got wireless options that are data options.
Satellite.
Low orbiting satellites, amazing, works extremely well compared to LTE. You've got microwave providers, which, they do little relays off buildings. You get rural areas out there. I mean, here's another interesting stat. 50% of the U.S. commercial buildings out there do not have fiber in them.
Really?
If you don't have fiber, you're not getting high-speed internet very easily, unless you're doing low orbiting satellite or some of these other methods.
How about these parking garages? How is it that you ever watched the show 24?
Of course.
Yeah. So how does Jack Bauer get wireless?
Jack Bauer's
bunker.
Yeah, he broke a lot of rules of technology. Anybody in technology that used to watch, I loved that show. Like, those Cisco phones.
Should be working down there.
He was breaking all the rules of some technology components, right? But they had the little fancy Cisco 7940 phones on their desk. I mean, anybody that was in technology would watch and seeing what technologies are out there. Some of the technologies were probably Jack Bauer only technologies. Specials, yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Love that show, man.
Yeah. So what are you excited for in the business?
Well,
as you grow your business,
the exciting piece is the pace in which we're growing, which means we're doing something right. Our platform that's being built out,
right,
which is a portal today for our customers, solves a huge problem, right? So I'm a big believer that it costs so much more to acquire a new customer than keep the existing one happy. And I'm excited about the fact that everything that we're doing on any given day is predicated on the idea that we need to be solving problems for our customers and evolving with them. And our platform allows us to do that, to do something that's very, very unique and outside the box to what we have done traditionally. So I'm really excited at some of the logos and the accounts that are now sourcing from us, that are finding value in this, and just kind of the response to what we're doing has been pretty epic. Yeah.
How about AI? How are you seeing that affect your part of the business in that whole ecosystem?
So AI is it's kind of interesting. In the old days, right? The telecom providers, generally speaking, have tons of data, but old systems, and most traditional telco is ran by folks that come from network infrastructure backgrounds, not from developer backgrounds, right? Big difference between those two. So what I find exciting is that at least in our space and with AI, is that some of the next generation companies that are being built up are specifically designed to gather data that's really important data in our space that has never been collected over the years because of these old antiquated systems. So as a result of that, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a lot more AI in the telecom space, which is kind of a dinosaur under the hood.
Right, grabbing all that data.
And using it to enhance the customer's experience. That's
So
the
how
next
about
big thing.
privacy? That seems like you got this AI entity or whatever it is, right? Just grabbing all the data that's passing through those pipes.
So all the data that's passing through the pipe is encrypted by the customer. So you got to think of the pipe as really just a conduit. What you put in there from the service provider side, we don't care.
Yeah.
We're just getting you from A to Z. We suggest you encrypt the heck out of it, right? So from a security standpoint, on the voice side, there's call recordings. There's, the security piece of it is there's DDoS attacks out there. That's when a service provider gets attacked, and that's a big, potential problem. But to answer your question, security is always going to be a big deal in the telecom space. I think it's just not in the area of people think it is, which is, hey, I'm sending internet over here. I can go unwind this and capture it. It's in other areas that are unrelated, like the infrastructure under the hood,
or even the human element,
which is always by far.
I was just reading an article the other day on an iPhone hacker or iPhone thief.
Yeah.
He'd go in there, go to parties, schmooze the person with the iPhone, get the iPhone. Within seconds, he changes the facial recognition, changes everything, and then phone is gone, right? And there's no way to track it because he turned that feature off, all while the guy's drinking or the ladies are drinking. And what's interesting that he said was, it's easier to steal a phone from a guy than it is to steal a phone from a girl.
Huh.
Because of the woman's heightened awareness.
Makes sense.
So
interesting. Well, I mean, our friend Kobe, is in the security space. I'll tell you, anybody can be hacked, like an individual perspective, right? So, I've done some projects in the medical world and the financial world, and that's a heightened level of security. And boy, you can do anything and everything you can, but there's only so much.
Yeah. So for aspiring, entrepreneurs or guys that are looking to move up the ranks in their field, right?
Yeah.
What would you say is the top 5 tips you'd recommend? Like, let's say for an aspiring sales executive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I say this all the time to my kids. The old saying, "Oh, go find something you love, and then build off of that." I have a slightly different variation of that. I say, find something, become insanely good at it, and you will fall in love with it, which is kind of what happened with me in telecom. Like I said,
you weren't.
I wasn't in love with this. Is a non-sexy business, but I actually started to like it. And when I started to like it, then I started to really like it. And then I started spending time studying. And I mean, I spent an absurd amount of time studying it. So the first thing I would say is, be open-minded, find something that you could like and enjoy, become really, really good at it, and you'll be surprised you will fall in love with it. And then if you can monetize that, that's fantastic. And that usually comes by way of solving a problem, right? So, not everybody wants to be a business owner. I can tell you that it's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not all unicorns and rainbows.
Right.
It's, even when you're doing well, subconsciously you're thinking,
like what could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
You're always thinking that, and it's
Or
just
feeling guilty for going on vacation, or
I mean, you're feeding more mouths in the back of your mind. Your priority is, hey, you've got my customers' priorities, and then I've got my team's priority, and you're last in the chain of that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to worry about, but then there's a lot to be excited about and huge upside. So that's one of the things I would say is, identifying whether or not you want to work for somebody or not, because there are amazing companies out there with good mentors and bosses, which is another thing. I mean, you are what you surround yourself with. I mean, the old Isaac Newton saying, if I see further today, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. That's my life.
Yeah.
I mean, MMA, Matt Hume, coach, right? In the telecom space, I could go down the list. In every space that I can think of,
You've had mentors along the way.
I've just always been able to find the best of the best. And there's a reason they're the best of the best. And it passes on. I'd say the other, couple of ideas for the up and comers is, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah. Now you got people, on surfboards saying, sign up for this course, we'll make you successful tomorrow.
Dude. I mean, I got my kids even think, I could just, go do some podcasts and suddenly a bazillion people are going to tune in and pay me checks.
No, I would tell you it's work.
That's right. That's right. But if you've got the right mindset, I always tell myself, and I think about it on the weekends when I study a lot in my space.
You also have a book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's it called?
Portable Consultants.
Okay.
The reason
What do you talk about in the book?
At the time, I was getting pulled kind of privately to the side from a bunch of executives going, hey, these CIOs at the time, this is 2015, I think, when I wrote the book, they were...
Where can you find the book?
It's on Amazon, and it's all over the... there's type in Portable Consultants, you'll see it everywhere. And it's outdated, though. Right?
You gonna do another version? Abridged?
I might. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I think it was designed... it was designed to really just be a simple guide to consuming and buying the stuff that I do every day, which is immensely valuable to some folks out there, especially executives who have 20 other things besides telecom and infrastructure that they're managing. And they're like, man, I need some Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
Right? And that was the intent, was here are the Cliff Notes with an unbiased approach at taking a look at this. But that's one of those things you don't jump into to get rich either.
Yeah.
So I got, and I'd just say, for anybody coming up, keep up grind. Keep a routine, and just know that if you keep the routine, at least for me, I have the same routine over and over again. And success is not doing one thing right in my mind. It's doing thousands or hundreds of thousands of little things right. Very rarely do you land on a Facebook scenario and you got a unicorn jumping out of the sky. Most folks, I think, that have had success will tell you it's an accumulation of all the little things when nobody's looking that got them there.
Yeah. And that also ties in with mixed martial arts, right? You do a takedown, all the steps leading up to that takedown, all the steps leading up to that submission. You do those right, you're going to get the submission. You're going to get the takedown.
Yeah.
Right. And
chaining it together.
Yeah. And how long have you been training mixed martial arts? And how has that, the mixed martial arts philosophy helped you in the business world?
Man, it's been... So I started mixed martial arts. I was a wrestler in junior high. I wrestled in high school. And I wrestled my senior year under Matt Hume, who at the time, this was before the UFC, so nobody knew that
he was the greatest before.
Yeah, he was like this. Yeah. And he had Bjorn with, we had, so I'm wrestling, and I've got these legends coaching, and I had heard that Matt was a fighter. I'm a high school boy, and I'm thinking, what, and
like Washington.
It didn't look like, Matt didn't. He's so calm and nice and humble. He didn't strike me as somebody that's beating up 300 pounders like I'm getting told, right?
Yeah.
There's rumors are going around. And then I went into AMC Pancration just to check it out right around the end of a wrestling season, maybe early May. So it was a little bit past that. I go in there and I see Matt at the front desk, and he's watching a video of some of his recent fights. And the highlight in that video was him. There's a guy named Kenny Monday, gold medalist wrestler, and Matt that were competing against each other. It was a submission thing, and Matt tapped him out in like less than a minute. And then you could see Kenny do one of these, and then he went to kind of go back in, and then I'm pretty sure Matt probably popped his knee from the toe hold, but I was like, ooh, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I started taking Muay Thai classes in 95, and then went off to college and came back. And I will tell you, unequivocally, one of the best things to have ever happened to me, based both on community that I've learned. I would have never met you. I mean, shoot, I've known you 20 years, but some of my best friends on the planet are from there. But it's taught me the same thing that wrestling taught, which, everybody thinks of just the grind and this and that. Humility.
Yep.
Because there's not a damn one of us that have gone into an MMA gym at some point and got our asses kicked inside and out. And it happens a lot more frequently than people think. And so
it's like you get beat up at the office with a bunch of clients saying no.
Yes.
And then you go to the gym and you get your face smashed in.
It's this weird, crazy thing. But when I leave the gym, I humbled 1,000% of the time. Even if I have a good day, I'm completely humbled. And I also tell my wife, one of the things I love most about the MMA world is, and when I'm training at least, is throughout the day I have a lot of times where I'm thinking about lots of things. And I know when you train, and I know when I train, I'm present, right?
Very present.
There's not very many times in any part of my day that I'm as present as when you're about to punch me. So
it's instant feedback.
If you do
something wrong, you're gonna know it right then and there.
And talk about wanting to get better at something. I explained earlier, the key to success, or one of the things I think is important, is getting really, really good at something. Well, in the business world, you might get, you might not get the job you want, you might not get such and such, but in the MMA world, you're gonna get your ass kicked. So you have a huge incentive to figure it out as quickly as possible. And so, I mean, that's a huge
But
one.
even in the business world, right? You get your ass kicked by being fired, by not getting a promotion.
Yep.
So all of those things are feedback, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Agree. Yeah.
So,
one feels, well, they both feel terrible logically, but one feels worse physically. Yeah.
So, thanks for your time. Just to close out, what would you say is your number one reason for success, or what's your definition of success?
My definition of success is it has nothing to do with the monetary side and everything to do with being able to progress and get some really good at what you're doing. Loving it is an important piece, but also being able to share that with others. And to me, the ultimate goal in my mind is the ability to pave it forward. That Maryland lady that I was telling you about, she's constantly in the back of my mind. And I don't know if I will feel like I've done her justice, or some other folks like that, or been successful, unless somebody else is the recipient, or lots of others are the recipients of any success that I have. And that's always planted in the back of my mind, how do I pave it forward
Right.
for the ones that did it for me? And it's less about the dollars and cents. So that would be success to me, is to be able to say,
I've helped a lot of people.
I helped a lot of people.
Mhm.
I'm leaving this place a little better than when I came.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Ricky, thanks for being on the show. How can people find you?
Folks can find me, our website's portableconsultants.com. They can reach out at Rick at portableconsultants.com. Our website, you can see the links there to connect. So, yeah, man, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Dude, congrats on the success with this show. And I look forward to...
It's quite the journey.
Yeah, man. I can't wait to see more.
All right. It's good to see you, brother.
Yeah, see you, man.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning into this show. If you found value in what our guests shared and what we share on the show, please feel free to share with your friends and family. We'd love to see you back here. Thank you again. And you can find us on pretty much every social media channel. You can find us on every social media channel, such as LinkedIn, Zekin, YouTube, Facebook, X, TikTok, to name a few. iTunes and Spotify as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Step into the unscripted arena. Subscribe.